With the rising interest of manga growing here in the West, many beginner weebs are left puzzled, nay, dazzled by the galactic level of options they have to sift through just to find something they like. I mean, for crying out loud, your average series tends to be over 10 volumes in length. That's a large ask for anyone first starting out in anything. You wouldn't watch 10 movies or 10 episodes of something you have zero clue about, right? So why would you do that here with manga, when one-shots are both cheaper and quicker to read through, easing that burden of choice most of us feel? If you don't like one, just pick up another. Don't like the story halfway through? No problem. You don't have to go through multiple volumes just to find something you like. It's all right there. In fact, the power of the one-shot is so forgotten, so undermined, that even the shorter ones, which can be anywhere from 10 to 60 pages, carry the same emotional impact as their lengthier 1 to 2 volume brethren. And what better place to be looking for manga recommendations than right here? Everyone, I bring to you all a list to lighten your search, to shed some light on the beautiful, beautiful world of one-shot mangas, and to hopefully point you in the direction of an artist or style you click with, a request I am most happy to fulfill, so long as there are ears to listen. Sitting at just 11 pages in length, HUVAHH, or HUVAHH, you know what, the name actually doesn't matter, and I'll explain to you why shortly, but first and foremost, all you need to know is that HUVAHH here, if you hadn't been able to tell from the art style, is the brainchild of legendary mangaka Koyubi Hayashida, an author who needs no introduction. These gross textures and all the dreariness, you know it's her style immediately. It's unmistakable. Something I found fascinating while doing research on this one-shot is that the story was originally published in the art book for the Shadows of the Damned video game. Remember that game at all? I haven't heard that name in such a long time. That shit was on the 360. I think it came out in 2011 or something like that. You'd always see it on sale at GameStop. Good times, good times. But aside from this one-shot though, Hayashida also contributed to the game itself with enemy design concepts, which you're currently seeing on the screen right now. It's crazy. I've played this game forever ago without ever knowing one of my favorite manga authors of all time had a hand in the art direction. Wild stuff, man. It's such a small world. Something that makes this story stand out in my mind is the fact that the whole thing is narrated through these gibberish words or some kind of foreign language we're unaware of. It's illegible to us as the reader, so all the storytelling being done in this case will all be told environmentally. Kinda like a certain manga you should go watch a video on. Anyway, that's why I said the pronunciation of this title shouldn't even matter, because I'm pretty sure it's just a gibberish word from the story's universe. I really like that. It adds an extra level of artistry to this bite-sized bit, but I digress. Our first story begins, as all Hayashida works begin, in a horrifically gloomy and terrifying place. In this case, our dreary locale is a big ol' mansion, or castle, or maybe like a church. Regardless, we're greeted to a little bit of foreshadowing as the scene pans to a girl playing harmonica inside this disgusting mystery building. All the while, a stripy guy stands in the background, this one right here. Outside, pressed against the very glass itself, crowds of people gather for some reason that is unknown to us for about 2 milliseconds, as the next page reveals to us the girl being sacrificed. First getting tied down to a mattress, before then being shish kebabbed full of kitchen cutlery, dropping the harmonica. It also shows some of the sickest character designs I've ever seen for a creepy cult leader. On the next page, we cut to a new scene and a new character who I'm just gonna call Polearms, as he digs around a pile of dismembered human carcasses. What he's searching for the time being, is a mystery. And much like the girl who had the harmonica, Mr. Polearms here holds a metal bar in his mouth and imitates playing the same instrument. Strange. We see him go about his daily life, taking the train, and going out for a bite to eat, standard cup of noodles being the one and only entree. Here at the diner, it's revealed to us that what I assume to be his head is actually just a mask, a running theme carried throughout most of Hayashida's work. And that metal pole isn't held in the mask's mouth at all, it's actually lodged through the mouth of the real Polearms, the guy beneath the mask. It's going straight through his cheek. Lo and behold though, he actually turns out to be the stripy guy from the beginning of the story, now a little older and way more beefed up. Boy's been doing only back day, it would seem. Shortly into his meal, Stripey Guy is confronted by another mysteriously masked figure, and looking straight off of the pages of a Die Dark volume. They almost look like a bounty hunter type dude if I had to place it somewhere. But it doesn't really matter, as the stranger doesn't stay for long, and actually comes bearing a gift to our protagonist here. And wouldn't you know it, it's a harmonica. The harmonica. Presumably what the man has been searching for this whole time. As Six Eyes leaves, I'm gonna take a shot in the dark here and assume that he gives Stripey Man some more information before heading out. And my reason for this is because in the next panel, we see Polearms making his way to a specific location, to an old, withery shack out in the wilderness. And inside, who do we find but the cult leader himself who sacrificed the girl? Now an old, shriveled up man. Way less intimidating as well. We know it's him based on the staff. I mean, just look at that thing. There's not a lot of people walking around with this staff. And in a haste act of overdue justice, Polearms, Stripey Guy, whatever you want to call him, drives his two blade arms straight into the old man, fucking Chainsaw Man style. Or I guess Abara style since Nihei did it first, but you get what I mean. It's sick and it's very badass. In an end befitting any Hayashida story, the tale concludes with Polearms whistling a tune as he leaves the old, now abandoned shack. Though this time, not with a metal pole between his teeth, but the girl's original harmonica, finally having served some much due justice. Originally serialized in the 12th issue of Rakuen Le Paradis, The Girl on the Other Side of the Glass is the second one-shot on our list, and a good palate cleanser for everything that's to come. Now, this one is nearly 3 times longer than HUVAHH in length, and is also written/illustrated by a famous author, Unita Yumi. Unita Yumi. Where have I heard that name before? Unita Yumi. Oh yeah, that's right, she's the author of Usagi Drop. I think we all remember how that shit ended. Ugh, I still have nightmares. Well, unlike that manga, and unlike our previous entry, this story is actually a romantic, feel-good slice of life. And no, she's not tricking us with this one, boys, it's actually a happy ending, I swear. Taking place in modern-day Tokyo, our second story follows a man by the name of Takahashi, self-proclaimed proper man and office worker. Every day, as according to his usual schedule, he hits the train at the same time, much in the same way he watches the same weather channel, much in the same way he takes the same exact route to work. Every day, always the same routine. Though, recently, something has changed. As of late, the 29-year-old has been spotting a woman on her way to work. A lady always walking in the opposite direction of him. A complete stranger. But this isn't no ordinary lady, no. This lady actually glances back at our guy here each time they pass by each other. It's not just him. Every time Takahashi glances at this woman, she glances back, and their eyes lock momentarily before continuing on their way. And it's not just him being a creep. The lady actually looks back at him too each day, even getting embarrassed when caught doing so. Now these morning glance-offs are pretty much the only good thing in this guy's life, as his work consists of having large amounts of stuff dumped onto him on the regular. Overtime being the name of the game here. But he doesn't let it bother him. Takahashi just continues to look forward to locking eyes with this mystery woman the following morning. An extremely Japanese story, you gotta love it. Well, eventually, Takahashi works up the courage to wave at the stranger while walking to work. And crazy enough, she actually waves back. Look at this guy, he's blushing. He's actually blushing here. Heartbeat racing and all. But the very next day, it would appear she gave it away, because as Takahashi is approaching the woman this time in their usual spot, she's accompanied by a well-dressed gentleman wearing a suit. Much like our mystery lady here, like they have the same attire. Because of this, Takahashi assumes the man is probably from the same company as her, and he gets extremely jealous about it. They even lock eyes awkwardly as they pass. But the awkwardness would continue into the next day. This time, when Takahashi passes the woman, she's just looking down the whole time. Doesn't even give him a glance. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Why doesn't he ever say something? He could literally just talk to this lady instead of resorting to high school antics. But the reason why is actually because of this glass separating the two walkways. Like, there's a piece of glass right here. He couldn't say anything even if he wanted to. Passing each other by in an experience he harkens to a fish tank. The imagery is pretty cool visually and feels accurate if you've ever been in one of these overcrowded types of places. Of course, that day at work is just as depressing as the walk over here. literally making him feel worse about the whole situation. But he makes it a goal of his to get off work regardless, forcing himself to get out of this hellhole at a reasonable time. He's always pulling late shifts, so he's kind of putting his foot down here for once, even though not really, he's just doing his job. Now, something I may not have clarified before, but the encounters with this mystery woman happen exclusively in the morning. Never has he ever walked past her on the way back to home, only to work. So that's why, when he does get to go home early, it's a complete surprise to him that he walks into her now. At this point though, Takahashi just faces his fears and actually tries to talk to the lady, telling her to sit put as he quickly runs to the other side of the glass. And this is when they finally meet. Not separated by glass, but actually face to face, for the first time. Rather than say something cute or slick though, Takahashi asks the lady why she's been ignoring him lately, and she confirms the thing we've all been hoping. The reason why Mystery Lady here has been ignoring Takahashi is because on that day she was walking with another man to work, she had no way of telling him that this was just a coworker that she worked with, not someone she was romantically involved with. I know, it sounds kinda overdramatic, like who cares, you don't know this lady, but these two have been making eye contact for a long ass time. You'd think she'd have some kind of a crush on him too. But then, shit gets a little sad because she says there really is no misunderstanding to be had at all. Because they aren't anything in the first place, they're simply strangers. And she's right, Takahashi knows nothing about this woman. Not her name, nor her age or hobbies, nothing. Now, I'm gonna pause here because I wanna ask you, the viewer, what would you do in this situation? Would you ask for a name, introduce yourself, say something witty, like what would you do if this was you? Because, rather awkwardly, Takahashi fumbles this bag so hard that he jumps straight into asking her out. Like he just chased her down the station and just immediately goes, "Will you go out with me?" I mean, no claps, just straight into it. He even gets scolded by her for his appearance. Like nothing's going right for him. Then, as if shit couldn't get any worse, it immediately gets sad because the guy just gives up. He second guesses himself, apologizes for the strangeness, and then gives up, opting to just head back home. Defeated. It's sad, you know, it's kinda sad. It's not supposed to end this way. And she's obviously saddened by this too. For crying out loud, she stares back at him every day. You both have crushes on one another, just say something. But he just apologizes and walks off. And as he's doing so, he thinks, what the hell? And takes one last glance back at her. And hey, she's staring back at him too. What the hell is going on? Is she playing hard to get? What was happening? Is Takahashi both an idiot and a sociopath? Because after seeing this, he literally just grabs her by the arm. Up, 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 up. I swear, this isn't gonna end like Usagi Drop. I promise you guys. He simply grabs her by the arm and starts introducing himself. Not exactly how a normal person should talk to someone, but you know, it's what he does. At first I thought she was gonna find this creepy, but she just allows it to happen and scolds him about his appearance again, about how something's always wrong with him every single day, no matter what. And then we find out the reason why this lady stares back at our boy here every day. Ever since she started working at her new company, a bunch of depressing stuff has been happening in her life, and locking eyes with Takahashi in the mornings, it always cheered her up. His simple gesture was actually a comfort in this time of turmoil for her. And then, the lady finally tells Takahashi her name, something we don't get to know since the manga ends with him narrating how all this took place a while back. The last two panels show them passing each other once again, though this time Takahashi's just full-on waving, beaming with excitement. Though, can you really blame him? After all this time, he actually managed to get the girl's number. Up next on our list, we have Koyubi-sensei's Paranormal Challenge, the sequel to Uguisu Sachiko's previous one-shot, The Suspicious Visitor. Published in the 52nd edition of Nemuki Plus, this one-shot runs equally as long as the previous story and acts as the perfect entry into Sachiko's twisted catalog of horror. Nemuki Plus, by the way, is a continuation of magazine Nemuki, which is where a lot of the Junji Itoh stories got published after his time at Monthly Halloween. Why bring this up? Well, because much like Itoh, Sachiko is a horror genius, and an underrated one at that. From the macabre to the grotesque, and everything in between, she does it all flawlessly. I highly recommend her stuff. Also, I'm completely blown away by how she's not a household name by this point. definitely someone who deserves more spotlight, and hopefully this one-shot will provide that. So our third story takes place at the luxurious Southern Cross Hotel Resort, where Yumi, the man narrating this story, works as a humble bellhop. Now, as stated by the guy himself, it's always been a dream of his to work at this hotel, something he's been doing for 5 years now. But in all this time spent at the resort, Yumi had never experienced what he's about to experience today. One day as he's working, this lovely specimen of a lady comes strolling in, dead-eyed and completely silent, kind of like that Ghibli ghost thing in Spirited Away. It's no matter though, as she still manages to acquire her key and sign herself in, though rather wobbly. How no one is freaked out by this, I will never know. But good for them, I would have ran out of the hotel by this point. So the whole time Yumi spends ushering the lady to her room, he remains calm and composed on the outside, but there's no hiding how bizarrely creepy this whole situation is. The lady's foul odor even fills the elevator on their way up. And as they get to the door of the room, she just sort of palm strikes him out of the way and closes herself inside, rather quickly. She even cracks the door again for a second to put up the do not disturb sign. It's fantastic. And honestly, Yumi is just glad to have the whole experience over and done with. Or so he thinks. 2 whole days would go by, and by this point, the room in which the smelly lady resides has begun sprouting these plant-looking things, the flowers of which cause that putrid stench Yumi was smelling in the elevator. It even wafts about the air like some sort of gas almost. Sickening. After getting the manager involved to open up the room, even more of the nauseous smell can be seen pouring out. And just think about that for a second. There's so much of this stuff that it's visible in the air. And what's inside is something none of you would have ever suspected. Unless, of course, you were paying attention to the small plants. Because inside, there is a bigger plant. A much bigger plant. Alien in its appearance. On the bed beside this mystery flora, we see what I assume to be the deflated version of the lady, but it turns out she never really was a lady in the first place. Her whole body is actually just a costume. Whoever, or rather whatever was wearing this, used it to get into the room. And now, it's gone. All that remains is the plant stinking up the whole place. Rather than burning it to the ground or hiring a botanist to study it, the manager has Yumi clear out the luggage and he calls the cleaning man. The cleaning man, that's it. Not the Ghostbusters, not some special person, just the cleaning man. Time would pass, and despite their best efforts to clean, the stench never really went away, nor did the plants, which continued to sprout out of the walls. Soon, more of these costume ladies would show up, a whole horde of them in fact. The shit was kind of getting out of hand, causing staff members to begin quitting left and right. And for good reason. These things were so off-putting, so repugnant and stinky, and why do they all look the same? But it didn't stop there. Soon, the entire decor of the hotel slowly changed to suit the needs of its new hosts, turning the place Yumi had dreamed of working at into a genuine nightmare. But all hope was not lost, as halfway through this manga, the real protagonists of the story finally show up to save us from this freak show. Koyubi-sensei and her white-haired assistant, 2 paranormal investigators skilled in the art of supernatural disposal, the former of which devours spirits whole and has an unholy hankering for yakisoba. These 2 just sort of waltz right in, requesting a room at this lovely establishment. In fact, unbeknownst to Yumi at all, who's only moments away from death at this point, the owner of this place hired them specifically to deal with these very much unwanted guests. According to the assistant, these disgusting women stinking up the place are actually interdimensional beings from outside our reality. The smell the hotel has been experiencing causes these dimensional warps to completely encompass and distort an area, attracting more of these beings in the process and draining the life out of Yumi here. Like he didn't think anything was wrong, but the life is being sucked out of him. Just look at him here. The assistant continues to explain that the first lady is the cause, the root if you will, to all the others finding their way here. Now since Koyubi-sensei can only eat ghosts, and not aliens since they're completely different entities, just as Dandadan, they'll have to resort to other tactics entirely, just to deal with these pesky, prevailing pests. Rather than absorbing the spirits Kirby style, the assistant suggests that Koyubi simply spit out some spirits to combat the dimensional aliens. 3 months worth of spirits to be exact. Have them duke it out like it's Pokemon or something. How she is able to do this, I have no idea. But the two of them brace for impact as Koyubi drops a spirit bomb, the likes of which you have never seen. And I don't mean this in hyperbole. I don't mean this in a figurative sense. The spirits she upchucks are too many to count. So many ghosts and ghouls come pouring out that it causes a spiritual mushroom cloud. A huge explosion. Yet still, the story doesn't end here. After 3 long days of waiting for the spirits to battle it out, the entirety of the hotel is soon consumed by an enormous, unexplainable sinkhole, just straight down into the earth. But the bellhop's day only gets worse from here on out, as after this, Yumino is then immediately hospitalized by the authorities for quote-unquote delusions. Delusions, like they think he's crazy by what he's seen, and he probably is at this point, but luckily the owner of the hotel pays for all the medical bills. But still, this guy's traumatized for life. His whole thing's fucked up. The story then ends with the two detectives resting after a job well done. Koyubi's assistant explaining how the sinkhole was definitely caused by the two paranormal entities being too close to each other for too long. Luckily for them though, the interdimensional plant aliens have disappeared entirely. Problem is, now the hotel is haunted. Like, really haunted. Did you see all those spirits that came flying out? But the assistant knows this isn't a bad thing. No. Quite the opposite, actually. With the hotel now haunted, it would appear that the owner is in desperate need of a couple of ghost hunters. And who knows, maybe this time, he'll get a discount. Entry number 4, titled Mercy, is written and illustrated by the up-and-coming artist Shiki Kouyuu, the winner of the Tsuruta Kenji Special Award in Afternoon's 2016 Four Seasons contest. Monthly Afternoon being another manga magazine, and the Tsuruta Kenji Award being a prize for 600,000 yen, roughly $6,000. Not only is this award named after a legend in the field, but said legend is quoted as saying, "Even I am awed. His art is amazing. His talent is spectacular, and I can't wait to see his works get better and better," when talking about the one-shot. Now to some of you, this might not be a big deal, but just imagine for a second if a famous person from your field of work or hobby came out to congratulate you personally on something you made. It would be insane, a dream come true even, and a major boost to one's self-esteem. For those of you unaware of Koyuu's style, it's an artistic choice that places high emphasis on contrast and shadows, making everything look stoic and painting-like. Because of this, Koyuu can really show off just how detailed and lifelike his images can be. Whether it be cloth, metal, stone, flesh, or viscera, the visuals are on another level. Every corner of every panel is a complete delight to the senses. Not to mention, it's edgy as a motherfucker, so by default, I already like it. Everything is just so dark and menacing. I love it. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. Story number 4 starts off in a futuristic, dystopian city, one in which the church holds all the political power. The theme of it all, whether it be the architecture or the clothing, kind of makes it feel like a location you'd see in Bloodborne, but set way in the future. It's basically Bloodborne 2077. Why isn't that a mod yet? So in this city, and throughout the whole world for that matter, immortal beings came down from the sky over 500 years ago, an arrival that received mixed reception among the human populace. Once here, these immortals were used and then subjugated for selfish reasons, personal gain, and anything you could think of due to their godlike abilities. But since this whole place is run by the church, there can be no gods on this earth, for there is only one God, and they are not he. Eventually, what ends up happening is the church arrests all the immortals and any of those who conspire with them. And among all this despair and lack of hope is where our story begins, where we meet our protagonist of the story, a female immortal, who now, after all these years, hunts down her other immortal brothers. Pretty standard manga trope, but what makes this one have a nice spin to it is the fact that her latest assignment is to bring down Cardinal Gabrico Tariminya. That is a hard name to pronounce. One of the heads of the church, and the same man seen preaching on all these monitors. Apparently, it took the Shadow organization quite a while to discover he was an immortal too, since his position in the church was so high. But now that his cover's blown, the unknown female immortal is assigned with taking him out for good, which can only lead to one place. At the center of the city, Down in the depths of a hole which used to house the Grand Cathedral sits a prison the Cardinal uses to hold experiments on his prisoners. And I just gotta say, hats off on the imagery here. Everything's so monolithic and depressing. I love this shit. This guy is so underrated. Through our heroine's descent, the Immortal finds the first level of the pit where doctors perform sick and twisted trials, the length of which involves removing all of the organs out of a still conscious human child. Luckily though, the Immortal is able to intervene just in the nick of time, using this crazy cross spear thing, and a hand canyon the likes of which would make Dante from Devil May Cry jealous. Descending further into the pit, she arrives at the second level, where we find this enormous, unfinished statue repurposed out of the still visible cathedral stone. Imagine just how big it must have been when still standing. Inside, we begin to find hints and clues as to what may be going on here, chief of which is a painting eerily resembling our protagonist here, and that's when we hear it. From somewhere even deeper into the pit, a voice can be heard, bellowing. And so, she follows it, deeper and deeper and deeper, until finally we reach the third and final level of this insidious underworld, an enormous, empty catacomb. Though not empty for long, as off in the distance, something truly enormous approaches. From out of the darkness, a behemoth of metal and flesh emerges into the light to greet our hero, Cardinal Gabrico. Before the female immortal can even swing her spear, the giant slams her against the walls of the catacomb, trapping her in place. But this one is a lot smarter than you'd think, as in that statue building above their heads, bombs have been planted for this very occasion. If she is to get to the Cardinal directly, first the homunculus surrounding him must be dealt with. And that's where the bombs come in. After destroying chunks of the ceiling, sunlight from above is finally able to shine down into the bottom of the pit, melting the giant's flesh as it becomes incapacitated by debris, and allowing our hunter to finally get her prey. Several shots to the face later, and the Cardinal's body is finally exposed to his executioner. Apparently he even knows her, as sometime in the past, before he was this hideous creature, he actually knew her in person. Or rather, he knew her in immortality. Without so much as a word, the female immortal blasts the back of the Cardinal's head off. With this, she frees the prisoners found throughout the pit, and the story ends with her staring up at the sky wondering if one day she too will find eternal rest. The same kind of rest the Cardinal now felt forever. Now, if more bloody good artwork is what you're in need of, look no further than our next one-shot, Boys Be Zombitious. Such a good title with this one. I've always been a sucker for a good pun. God-tier names aside though, the following entry on our list is actually written and illustrated by a personal favorite of mine, Kodama Yuuki, the mangaka behind Blood Lad, ID Invaded, and Hamatora. Though he's known more for an anime aesthetic in his art direction, this particular one-shot is a phenomenal demonstration on how good he is at realism. Because goddamn, does this art look realistic. Aside from manga though, Kodama is also an extremely successful character designer for animes including Rhapsody, Special Kid Factory, and of course his original concepts in ID Invaded, Hamatora, and Blood Lad, the animations. Not to mention this genius. This absolute mad lad created Rumble Rose's 4-Coma Battle Royale, but that's neither here nor there. Our fifth story starts, as you probably guessed it, in a post-apocalyptic, zombie-infested world, and a new one at that, with the protagonist narrating about how the zombie apocalypse proper started only a month ago. Ever since that fateful day, he's been holed up in his house, surviving off nothing but these Kinder Egg chocolate things. You know what I'm talking about, like those toy egg things? Well, much like those, inside of each of these chocolate eggs is a badge with a different phrase on it. The guy promises himself that when the collection of badges is fully complete and all the food is gone, he'll set out and search for more food outside. Maybe even other survivors. I think deep down though, he knows he's gonna die because he's not too fazed by the creatures outside at all. On the contrary, he's more upset over the fact that he was never able to complete every single one of those badges in the collection, inside the chocolate eggs. Pretty trivial when considering the situation at hand, but his mind is completely broken at this point due to isolation. And the last badge he's missing is love, the love badge, the one thing he lacks in his life. This all goes further than just melancholy though. The guy has completely lost the will to live. It's a real downer, settling on finding a zombie to bite him and finally end his misery. Problem is, he doesn't want any ordinary zombie to bite him, oh no. This guy wants a pretty girl, who's now turned into a zombie, to bite him. I know, but can you blame him? What else does he have at this point? Anyway, as he's going about looking for a ghoulish gal, he ends up stumbling into Rachel, someone he used to go to school with and had a crush on. For a second, he almost lets her do the deed, but since she has intestines hanging from her stomach, he decides not to go through with it. Not because she's dead, not because she's a flesh-eating zombie, but because she did not meet his standards. So what does he do after this? Well, I'll tell you, dear viewer. He develops a 100-point numbering system to rate zombie girls, of course, duh, isn't it obvious? And this ain't no short-lived journey either, because by this point, he's walked 20 miles from home, but still hasn't settled on a zombie worthy of eating him. Of course, he finds a ton of candidates throughout his voyage, but still none meet his fancy. Until finally, a dark-haired, 100-point beauty walks by his vision as he's fighting off a zombie wench. Following her, though, proves to be fatal as she leads him out into a field where a mob of zombie lies waiting. But he survives. Time passes, and the protagonist finds himself in a cabin to take shelter after all those run-ins. How much time has gone by, how many zombies he's killed, he has no idea. He doesn't know. Presumably too delirious to know. Sitting there, reminiscing about his dream lady, he comes to the realization that she probably never really was a zombie, nor was she even there to begin with. He comes to realize that the vision of the lady that he's been chasing this whole time was the vision of death herself, and he comes to terms with the fact that she is his ideal woman, though more in a concept than actual appearances. She will be the woman who eats him. By the way, the panel showing this is just so cool. The way Yuuki draws his transition from the Lady of Death to the actual messenger bringing that death is just mwah. It's so perfect. Shit like this is why he's such a good mangaka. Check his stuff out, please. But just before the zombie can eat our protagonist here, its head explodes from a shotgun blast. The owner of that gun being a lady survivor with the very pin he needed to complete his collection. The pin reading, "Love." Our story ends with the guy collapsing from exhaustion and the lady signaling the rest of her group to come and help him. It would seem that, in the end, he really did find what he was looking for all along. Sitting at number 6 on our list is a short vignette titled The Female Fridge Number 1, and probably the funniest shit you'll read all month. If you thought some of the names on this list were big before, you have no idea, because this next one is written and illustrated by the legend himself, Miki Tori, aka Mickey Bird. Now, I know I've been calling multiple artists in this video legends, but holy fuck is this guy a major name in the manga world. With a career starting all the way back in 1979, you'd be completely dazed by the amount of titles he's worked on. Look at all of it. Not only has he had an enormous influence on this medium we all know and love, but he also has a hand in essays and screenplays for movies. Shout out to Pat Labor the Movie 3. Now, despite giving you guys this small background, you are not prepared for what I am about to show you. No one is. This one-shot is so strange, so bizarre, it almost seems more like something you'd say at a campfire or at a friend's house rather than on a published work of manga. Somebody published this. I'm warning you, once you know of this forbidden knowledge, there's no going back. Here we go. Our 6th one-shot opens with a monologue from our main character, a woman who has mysteriously, and rather recently, been turned into a fridge. According to her own words, just one day out of the blue, she wakes up as a fridge. Like she has no idea how or what has happened, but now she's a fridge. To make matters even stranger, and much to her surprise, she ends up being a fridge in the apartment of Kuji, a guy she knows in real life, who is equally as confused as she is. Unfortunately though, there is no way for them to communicate. I mean, come on, that would be too silly, right? But no, Kuji just assumes someone he knows put it in, and that's that. Well, as time would go on, and the woman became more accustomed to being a fridge, she began growing a little too close to Kuji here. Since the two of them spent all day together, and he would act in the same way around her as you would a girlfriend, she begins catching feelings for him. And it's way weirder than I make it sound. She even finds orgasmic levels of pleasure when being opened and filled by Kuji's big, bulky groceries. It's very sexual. I mean, for God's sakes, she's leaking everywhere. Unfortunately, this honeymoon phase wouldn't last for too long, as one day, Kuji brings home a lady friend. Naturally, this enrages the fridge, only fueled by the sight of them making sweet, sweet love before her very eyes. For such a transaction against her, the fridge resorts to only one option: murder. After a long session of bumping uglies with each other, the two go out to the fridge for a cold beer. But as they go for the beverages, the fridge takes revenge by first breaking the girl's nose clean off and then falling on top of the guy, sandwiching them together in eternal slumber. In doing so, the fridge takes on a strange avatar resembling that of both Kuji and the woman combined into one. And after vomiting out all the groceries she once had within her, the fridge's avatar now wanders the streets in search of another man. The story ends with her finding that man and showing up to his front door as a fridge. Our final one-shot is actually made by two people rather than just one. It's illustrated by Itoh and written by Kanzaka Hajime, a famous author responsible for the Slayer series of light novels. A series that gets so popular in Japan that you end up seeing 5 movies for it, a shit ton of manga adaptations, multiple TV shows, radio dramas, video games, a physical card game, and now this Lord of the Rings spin-off. That's right, you heard me correctly, it's a Lord of the Rings parody, manga edition. Something to cleanse your minds of the whole fridge debacle. So our 7th and final story starts off with the introduction of our 2 protagonists, Mikkelin-san the Grey, I shit you not, that's his actual name, and Lena the Pink. Well, introduction is rather a loose term. It actually starts off with Lena completely laying waste to some lesser demons by using this necromantic fire spell called the Dragon's Slave. God, I love the older style of manga. Just look at this shit. For anyone who hasn't experienced any of the aforementioned ways of viewing the Slayer series, it's here where I'll fill you in that Lena the Pink is Lena Inverse, the main character from the Slayer series, and the younger sister of Luna Inverse, the Knight of Kafid. So it makes sense why she would be accompanying Mikkelin-san the Grey. She's already the main character. But wait, it gets better, because in the anime adaptation, Lena here is voiced by none other than Megumi Hayashibara, the woman behind iconic voices like Rei Ayanami, Ranma, Faye Valentine, Hello Kitty, Jessie from Pokemon, Haruka Urashima, Paprika, and so much more. She honestly warrants a video of her own. There's just so much work she's done. Anyway, after completely obliterating these demons, we discover that Wormtongue, henchman of Saruman the White, is the one who summoned these creatures here and is waiting in ambush for our heroes. You see, much like the books or the movies, the pair seeks to destroy the One Ring of Power within the bowels of Mount Doom. It's pretty straightforward. And as an agent of Mordor, the Conjurer here aims to stop them, although he's not a conjurer in the books. In a last-ditch effort to vanquish them for good, he summons a spell so foul, so hideous, that it blots out the sun itself. And what is this spell? Banana peels. Tons of them. Enough to pacify anyone momentarily, rendering their feet completely useless against the power of falling on your ass. But Lena just chucks a fireball and burns him to a crisp, rather easily too, causing Wormtongue to fall to the ground and biting off his tongue in the process. Tough break, and rather ironic given his name. The pair continue on their journey towards the Black Land until eventually running into more henchmen, the 9 Nazgul Wraiths, former human kings now turned twisted creatures. Well, unlike the original story, the manga takes some liberties by having the Wraiths all use their swords to summon Zelos, another character from the Slayer series. Now Zelos here isn't just any old character. Zelos here is the 1,000-year-old priest of the greater beast Zelos Metallium. And just who is this greater beast Zelos Metallium, you might be asking? Well, I'm glad you asked, because she's actually a shapeshifter and one of the subordinates of the ruby-eyed Shabra Nigdu. And just who is this ruby-eyed Shabra Nigdu fellow? Fuck, you're full of questions today, but okay, I'll tell you. He's one of the 4 Mao residing within the fictional world of Slayers, as well as being one of the most powerful Mazoku. Mao being a term to mean Demon King, and Mazoku meaning genderless spirit residing in the astral plane. So basically, this guy is just a priest who worships a winged cat lady who works for this dragon demon guy who isn't really a guy, nor is he present on the same plane of existence as the previous guy worshipping Zealous Metallium. Basically, all you need to know is that Zealous over here is a bad guy in the Slayer series. Moving on. Now, since summoned by the Nazgul, you'd think Zealous would do something to fight Lina and McKellen-san, but seeing as he's brought here as a Mazoku, his powers can only work through negative emotions and not positive ones. His powers are useless here. Now, you might be saying again, what do you mean positive emotion? Isn't he here to kick some ass? And to that, I say no. All of the positive energy is coming from his fan club. In a reveal I did not see coming whatsoever, the Ring Wraiths lift their hoods and reveal themselves to be a Zealous fan club. Very kawaii. And not Zealous from the spin-off, but stands of the actual Zealous from the main Slayer series. By summoning him here to their presence, he has been effectively rendered useless. And Lina's got zero patience for this at this point. In a move very much resembling a game of Cho Chabudai Gaishi, the pink mage chucks the wraiths into the sky and turns to Zealous. Rather unluckily for him though, they won't have time to finish him off themselves, as the greater beast Zealous Metallium herself just kinda comes out of nowhere and drags Zealous off into a dimensional portal, presumably to be punished in some gruesome way. After this encounter, the two find themselves in Moria, face to face with Christopher the White, riding an enormous Balrog. I love these names, by the way, Christopher the White. Similarly to the Ring Wraiths, Lina smacks Christopher off into the next time zone, expecting the conjured Balrog to disappear since its conjurer is dead now. This isn't how Balrogs work at all, but I'll let it slide for now, it's a gag manga. But the Balrog does not disappear. In fact, using its fire whip, it only ensnares the young mage and grabs her within its fist, proclaiming that it is still Christopher. He merely transfused his soul into the demon's body. Have they read Lord of the Rings? I mean, have they seen the movies at all? What is happening here? Alright, so since the Christopher demon hybrid has one of our protagonists, you'd think McKellen-san would help out here, but he doesn't. He just ends up trying to sacrifice her, for the greater good and all. You shall not standing the bridge down into the depths below. But she still manages to snare the wizard regardless before they all plummet to the ground. Such a stupid mistake. If only the Balrog knew how foolish he had acted. Did he not know who he was messing with? Of the untold powers within McKellen-san's hands, he just hands it over. That's right, I'm not joking here. He just sort of hands it over. The wizard just hands over the ring, like he surrenders it, and the Balrog then drops Lina, choosing to hold the ring rather than her. The story ends with the demon being distracted before McKellen-san quickly blasts the Balrog with a second dragon slave. The end. That's it. It just ends, rather abruptly. So, what'd you guys think of these? Did any catch your eye? Any artists you wanted to research now? Because a lot of them write other stuff, and it's pretty good. Also, which art style was your favorite? I figured you all might like some more variety in these longer videos. Works from more than just one author. Personally, I really like the whole mini quest for revenge and redemption in HUVAHH. Any reason to gush over Hayashida's art style, and I'm in. But I have to give my top pick visually to Shiki Koyuu's Mercy, because goddamn was it gorgeous. Like I said, it's basically a futuristic Bloodborne. What's not to love? And speaking of Mercy, do you guys think that the statue down in the pit was the immortal girl? Because the Cardinal knew her personally. He even has a painting of her on the wall, and his whole speech about falling in love with the first immortal. And then that beckons the question, who is this lady? Is she the first immortal? Does she know who he's talking about? I'm full of questions. Of all the stories on here, this one definitely deserves its own series. And the fridge one, of course. Holy shit, the fridge one. If I could just get a nice 200-page volume of that fridge lady going around murdering people, I could die a happy man. We need more strangeness like that, it's great. Although I did like the other more tame stories as well. All the stories on here are fantastic. It's obvious why I picked them. Anyway, if there's any more one-shots you want me to check out, drop them down below in the comments, because I'm probably going to make another one of these in the future. I really like doing research for some of these. Also, as always, the socials for the artists are linked in the description of the video. Until next time, guys. the fridge resorts to only one option left: murder. Sounds